Welcome back, everybody. This is Jeremy Martin from Cinco Medicos, and in this video we're going to be talking about building balance on a societal or planetary level. So we are building on the last video, which spoke mostly about business but also community, building balance on a group level, and also the video that I posted about the individual building balance within ourselves with regards to the root chakra, which is concerned again with sustenance, nourishment, security, money, food, tools. It's really a metaphor for the issues of the physical, mental, emotional, and even spiritual survival and security complex. So this center concerns personal fears of insufficiency. And so to segue from what we talked about in the last video, I think it might be appropriate to talk about client and professional relationships and see how they start to blend into social systems. And in this video, we'll be talking about agriculture. I want to credit the Arsacian Foundation for their work. A lot of their videos are in Spanish, so I've done some transcription work, and I just wanted to give them credit because a lot of the ideas in this video do come from them, and I'm just promulgating them and putting my own spin on it, obviously. So in a client relationship, these issues that we spoke about in the last video can manifest in a number of ways, often in what many would consider unethical behavior. The professional might want the client to refer other clients to him or her. The professional may be interested in negotiating an attractive barter situation in exchange for therapy. All these kinds of needs may not be in a client's best interest and imply a professional's insufficiency or perceived lack or inadequacy, as we spoke about with regards to sales. And a lot of the times a professional person does this very unconsciously, feeling as if he or she does not have enough money or enough abilities to get the things that he or she needs outside of these relationships with clients, where their best interest, not his or her own, are really the first responsibility. And that's what we spoke about with regards to sales is, and community, with regards to building trust and really actually caring about what the other person needs rather than trying to take. Now, I've seen this a lot in my own healing work and in the healing profession in general. One might not think that they're a good enough healer and that they might have to fix the client's problem, I'm putting these in air quotes, to feel sufficient as a professional, to feel good enough or sufficient enough. So this could work for therapy or coaching or any other kind of healing work. Or the professional may worry how a mistake or a misunderstanding or a client's dissatisfaction with their service would affect their future business. And even if that dissatisfaction is really mostly a reflection of the client's own issues than the professional's skills and competence. So here the client may identify the therapist or coach as the cause of change and therefore loss, rather than take responsibility for their own successes or shortcomings. And so we see a lot of transference and countertransference, which could result in idolizing, putting the professional on a pedestal when things are going well, or blaming the professional when they're not. And you could translate this for sales in a business context or in communities as well. A lot of projections occur. And so owing to, in this example, the client's fear of insufficiency, we might attribute good change and bad change to the professional. And this can lead to a lot of dependent, predatory, exploitative, and parasitic relationships, such as a good or service that's supposed to help the client solve a problem or fulfill a need. For example, a medicine that's said to make the client better, but only temporarily reduces symptoms and never really takes care of the malady causing the symptoms. We see this a lot in the pharmaceutical industry, and such exploitative behavior can also occur within the company itself, where a business treats its employees poorly or abuses them outright due to fear of not enoughness, a need to outperform sales benchmarks and a general fear of change. I'll use Apple as an example here. It's one of the biggest, most profitable companies in the world, and for whatever reason, it can't really pay its employees that it has in sweatshops, or um, other businesses may outsource work overseas where hourly rates are cheaper, insurance isn't required, and labor laws are a little bit more lax and permissive. And that allows for human rights abuses, unsafe working conditions, overworking, or just underpaying employees in order to make cheaper goods and boost sales. And so that's kind of why I started out talking about unethical behavior as a little bit of a preamble to agriculture. And whatever the case, I'm not trying to, make myself morally pure here. I'm just trying to introduce some of the themes that we're going to talk about with agriculture. With a blocked or unbalanced root chakra, the professional or business's fear of insufficiency really leads to a perceived lack. Greed, aggression, anxiety, everything that we see on the individual level is really just aggregated in a company, business, or community. And so the business might become obsessed with securing more revenue rather than solving a client's problem. And this also can create a situation of dependence. So we see this with the fossil fuel industry versus renewable energy. It can also lead to poorly made products, such as cheap clothes that get holes in them after just a year of wear, or technology with planned obsolescence built in. Your computer breaks down and becomes unserviceable in a few years after you buy it. And so more broadly, as we get into the social system, we see that in consumer capitalism, people are buying things that they don't need or can't afford. This results in debt or becoming addicted to or dependent on certain products. And so a lot of these issues we see in the root chakra of society, which is agriculture. That gives us a lot of nourishment, sustenance. Without agriculture, we would starve, just like without sales, a company would starve. And so one of the solutions to this would be to trust and surrender to change. That's a prerequisite to mastery of the material, emotional, and spiritual life. When a professional or business trusts that its needs will be taken care of, he, she, or it is going to be able to create and sell products or services that put the customer's needs first and solve the problem. And what we see in agriculture is a lot more extraction, take, rather than give back to the land. And so as a result, we have fewer and fewer businesses and fewer industries in agriculture that are trying to consciously reciprocate and to understand the needs of the land, the needs of the people. And we see this with a couple of more ethical companies. We could say Patagonia not participating in Black Friday. But really, a lot of this begins with inner work like self-compassion, self-reflection, things that sound easy but are difficult and need to become regular practices if a professional or a business doesn't accidentally want to purposefully engage in predatory, exploitative, or parasitic practices such as what we see in agriculture, and that aren't in a client's best interest or in the earth's best interest. A more forgiving culture, allowing for mistakes, training, patience, human imperfections, these are all part of the process that can allow an enterprise or a social system to feel more secure in its enoughness, that there's more than enough food to go around, and yet we have hungry people. And so this seems to connote or refer to a basic problem in our society's root chakra. It's very unbalanced. And so some questions that we could just ask, generally speaking, is, do I fear change in general? Do I fear change in specific cases? Can I recommit to habits and practices that will take me further toward my own developmental goals without doing harm to other people? Do I feel insufficient with regard to money, land, or resources? Do I feel insufficient with regard to my own competence? Do I feel like I don't have enough to eat? And these kinds of questions. Um, and because money is so related to everything that we do, it's also related to the third center, the solar plexus, which is related to self-esteem and power as well as shame. Um, but now that we've kind of given a good introduction to the topic, we could shift to say that society is a biological body that, when healthy, it can grow, produce or reproduce, develop, and evolve. It too has glands and organs or chakras, energy centers that allow it to function properly. Now, today, obviously, we see that the social body is a bit sick with fever or cancer. Pick your analogy or metaphor. But this isn't bad necessarily. It's only a sign or a symptom that the social body needs to evolve in order to become healthy once again. So this is natural. This is evolution. But in order to evolve, the social systems that we have currently need to become more conscious. Just as a corporation, corp and oration is a dead entity. Without the people who make it possible, we don't really have a society. So we need to see ourselves as not separate from society, but that we make up society, and that society also makes up the earth. So we can't criticize what's happening in society unless we look at ourselves, because we are society. We need to look at ourselves and become more conscious if we want to improve the social body to become healthy once again and evolve. And so that's why we're looking at each one of these levels: individual, business, and then the greater planetary scale, so that we can improve on each level. And we do this by taking care of our own physical body on the root chakra level, by changing how we eat and sleep and exercise, by changing how we think and express ourselves, support ourselves financially, and so on. And then that change will be reflected on the outside. It's why Gandhi said, "Be the change that you want to see in the world." And so with agriculture, if we're more connected to the earth, if we feel more sustained, more grounded, more nourished, if we feel safe, fed, and taken care of, this is some of the first things that we discovered as a species, with the advent of agriculture, diet, health and wellness, conscious eating, and related areas. When we get to the bigger picture, we come to understand that agriculture really actually represents much more than how we feed ourselves. You might be wondering why society is so chaotic, why everything is collapsing right now, but chaos is really just another way of describing a lack of stability, a lack of security, a lack of nourishment, and a loss of our sense of safety. And another way of saying that humanity today has a very unbalanced or blocked root chakra is to just list everything that I just mentioned. So when we look at agriculture, we know that everything goes through really 4 major stages, and this is what I was talking about with the Arsacian Foundation. These cycles: something is born, it grows to maturity, then it reproduces or produces, and then finally it dies or goes dormant at least. And the cycle it continues forever. It's why the Native Americans would always talk about the infinite game of life. And it's really related to planting seeds all the way to harvest. We know that something is always in a cycle based on polarity, right? In the northern hemisphere, our spring is the fall, and in the southern hemisphere, their winter is our summer, and so on. So really, when we speak about agriculture, we're talking about nature and the very nature of cycles, of duality, yin and yang, positive and negative, not good and bad, but all contained within a circle, which could be the planet or the cycle of time, which is really a Fibonacci spiral, because it has small cycles like night and day, and those are contained within larger cycles like seasons, years, larger astronomical cycles of precession like the zodiac, which lasts about 26,000 years from its celestial start to finish, and then to even larger cycles like galactic periods and so on to infinity. And this spiral we see everywhere in nature, quite literally in physical form, in pine cones, in sunflowers, in the seashell, in the hurricane, in galaxy spirals. The word spiral actually means winding around a fixed center. So everything started from the center, then expanded from that, rotating around a fixed point while increasing its distance from that point. So each cycle expands outward from the last, which is why the spiral is really a symbol of life, of creation, of nature, and energy. And the spiritual meaning of the spiral is really interconnected and stemming from the source of all creation. So I will promise to relate this back to agriculture, but I'm building on a point here. We are quite literally talking about the singularity as the seed, which then expanded itself infinitely by spiraling outward for eternity. And the spiral is related to all life and to all growth, to all evolution and expansion. And even our DNA is in the shape of a spiral. Our fingerprints, embryos, tornadoes and whirlpools, animal horns, spider webs, chameleon tails, and so this gets really to a fundamental point about existence, the Hermetic principle of as within, so without, as above, so below, and what it really means to plant a seed or harvest fruit. And with this, we can talk about anything: planting an idea, allowing it to germinate and grow, to produce fruit and more seeds, then harvest it, and then allow it to die and allow the compost of that idea to fertilize the seeds of the last one. And it relates to what I was talking about with the spiral as the basic configuration of the chakras, actually, which we're talking about. These are actually literally wheels or vortexes of subtle energy in the body, which also symbolize change and evolution, the endless physical and spiritual cycle or paths in life and evolution, pointing to the fact really that nothing is ever born or ever dies, and that everything is only always in a constant state of flow and perpetual transformation. So there really is no beginning, there really is no end. A lot of people get really freaked out by that idea, like, wait, you mean this just keeps going on forever, ad infinitum? And yeah, I do. And this is the true meaning behind the tree of life, which we see depicted as the apple tree in the Bible, but also in countless indigenous cultures and cosmovisions, because the seed and the fruit contains all the potential for life. It comes from and represents the larger tree, which produces the fruit, which are like worlds or dimensions, and those worlds or dimensions give rise and nourish new realities, which then go on to produce their own seeds and new trees, all stemming back in spiral fashion to the original one. Hence why it was much more than just an apple tree. Hence why we're talking about much more than just agriculture. This is the tree of knowledge. And we see this too in the flower of life and other kinds of symbols. The beauty of these ancient symbols is really the wisdom of how and why the universe works the way it does. And if you subscribe to the ancient worldview, or one of them, all beings are really just fragments of one single being, in which each fragment was born from a seed from the great tree of life, and therefore possessed the full potential of all its roots and branches. But at the same time, it's a new tree with its own qualities and diverse characteristics, and that's what makes it characteristic of being unique in that one body. Recognizing the seeds as part of the same tree allows you to see all the capacities that you possess in yourself through others. So, tying all of that kind of video essay into one, in addition to agriculture as a social system that nourishes us, we can even pan out farther and look at these cycles of societies themselves. When we talk about, it's the end of humanity or the apocalypse, or Jared Diamond writes another book about collapse. we're really missing what the Mayans were talking about with their so-called circular calendar. For them, 2012 was not the end of the world, but it marked the end of a cycle, the very natural part of the process of evolution, and thus the beginning of a new cycle. Time and time again, we see that for a human society to be born, the fruit of the old one must fall, rot, and die, and plant seeds for the next one, and nourishing them with its fruit so that the next one can grow, mature, produce, and reproduce, then fall and die as well. And so this is exactly what happened to the Roman Empire, the Egyptians, the Atlantean society, and now what we're seeing with the American Empire. This is really just the same natural pattern of evolution. It's true of ourselves. In order to become someone else, our old self needs to fall or die in order to plant the seeds for a new self to be born, grow, produce, and reproduce, then die. And this is where we are as a species right now. In a lot of our social systems, such as agriculture, we can all see that this social system is in need of major reform based on how we've treated the earth, the soil, the land. It's really time to let go of the humanity that we are now, but the root chakra, when it's unbalanced, has a very hard time letting go. It fears change. We've talked about this twice already. It really fears not having security. But we also said that the way to become or feel more secure is to relax into the insecurity and to just flow with life. This is where we're at. This is where we're going. Autumn has arrived, and soon we will experience the winter of our spirits. And in this spiritual winter, when the time comes, and we're pretty much in it right now, we can begin to sow a new humanity at the beginning of spring. And this is one of very, very, very few times in my life that I will say that this is not a social theory that I'm proposing. It's not a New Age manifesto. It's not some anthropological idea up for debate. Really, this is just a fundamental law of the universe, which nothing can escape, not even our ignorance, because our very existence is precisely that. To argue with any of these points is really just like arguing with geometry. You can deny the truth all you want, but it is still just as much the truth as before. The reason that we don't see these cycles that I'm talking about in large part is because they're much longer than our lives, and we've become very disconnected from nature, which is another sign that our root chakra as a society is not balanced. The more connected we are to the earth, the more our society can change, grow, and evolve. But a society can take centuries to die and be reborn. So these cycles are very large in terms of the natural rhythms of the earth and our species. So the reason I'm talking about all this is because the meaning of the word agriculture is literally the culture of agro. And agro comes from the Greek and Indo-European ager, which means land. In Greek, the word ager generated the concept of ageia. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, but it's describing a set of lands, which today we call Gaia, whose name really means arable land, similar to how the word human comes from the Latin humus, and that means moist earth, and humility means to be connected to the earth. So if we're grounded, if we're talking about Gaia, if we're talking about humans, all of this stuff is really pointing to the same kind of idea, to value what feeds us and what is us, to value what we are. And so in order to feel grounded, you need to feel connected to both yourself and the earth. And over time, we've become very disconnected from the earth and ourselves. And rather than connect to the earth and celebrate it, we have really come to try and dominate the earth, to extract its resources, and dominating each other as part of that in war and social classes and things like that. And I believe it was Henry Kissinger who said, if you control food, you control people. And only a very unbalanced being in a very ungrounded society would say a thing like that, and actually desire the outcome of the sentiment rather than use it as an observation. Um, but but really, what I'm trying to say here is that because our connection to the earth implies a recognition of its natural resources, knowing that we're part of the human body that inhabits the body of earth, that we're not on earth, but we are it, and recognizing that what we do to the earth, we do to ourselves, and what we produce and how we produce it, how it nourishes our body and our soul, all of that is connected, and it's not isolated. It's not like, oh, I just go to the grocery store and I'm just little me. I'll give you a personal example here. For my part, I spend a lot of time this summer gardening and farming my own food, foraging in the wild, working with herbs and learning um, spring, summer, fall. And I felt very, very, very grounded, very connected to my community, and just, man, just happier. Knowing the potential of the soil, that's how we make awaken true humility, in that we're more connected to the earth. We're eating our own potatoes. When I did that, it was like eating my own work. It was eating my own knowledge and care and strength and my own capacity. It really connected to our ancestors. It reminded me that they learned how to do this, and we know how to do this now because of them, and it also connected me to the earth, quite literally. um, and so knowing how to do this myself, I appreciate the earth and how she does this infinitely if we just allow her the time, the space, and the right conditions to do it. Now, unfortunately, um, taking a little bit of a break, we've moved away from the countryside to live in cities. And I did this myself in my 20s, but today most people have no idea where their food comes from, how it's grown, the time and effort it took to grow, who grew it, and sometimes they even waste the food that you know it doesn't look a certain way, or they don't like how it looks odd. um, our food is increasingly industrialized. It's worked over by a lot of machines and not people. It's transported from incredibly far away across oceans and entire continents from where we live. And much of our soil, like I mentioned before, is in really terrible shape from overproduction. And a lot of our water is, which is so vital to our bodies. Our bodies are 70% water, and the plants that feed us, and the animals that also feed us. Um, that water is polluted from fertilizers and chemical sprays, and I won't go on much more. You know what's going on, and I will just say that to live in a more balanced, grounded, and well nourished and stable society, we also need to realize that our own ignorance of nature and agriculture is really always reflected in our own children's naivete. And I'm not kidding you, but I was reading a survey the other day. There was a survey of 1,000 British children, I believe, ages like 6 to 10 or 12, that found that 1 in 5 didn't know that apples grew on trees. And it was, let me see here, more than 9 in 10 weren't aware that bananas or strawberries came from plants. So the basic point is education, or teaching our children about nature, not just conceptually too, but experientially, taking them to farms and wild places and having them run with their shoes off. That's essential to growing a more balanced, well-nourished, and yeah, grounded society in the future. Our current society, in order to become more balanced, needs to become humble again, to reconnect to nature, both our internal nature and our external nature, and spend more time outside learning about the forests, restoring habitats, growing our own food. knowing the ways of renewal, understanding the greater cycles that I was talking about earlier. And as the famous agricultural adage goes, you reap what you sow. And if our civilization is to be stable and secure and well nourished and grounded, and for us to end hunger, for its root chakra to be balanced, in other words, it must be based on growing, harvesting, and eating nutritious food, and on knowing the terrain, Gaia, on knowing that without food, we die. Without nature and agriculture, we literally forget who and what we are. We lose our sense of self, not because we don't know where we're going, but because we forgot where we came from, that original seed, and that we're part of the tree of life. And so such simple things like growing your own food, that's a great way of remembering and honoring your origins. So I guess what I'm doing in this video is just planting a little seed here to know your garden, to farm, to talk to beekeepers, to plant more green things in and outside of your house, to learn how to work with herbal medicines, to spend time foraging, to just get outside. The more seeds you plant, the more time you give them to germinate, the more you sow, the more you'll reap, and the healthier and happier you'll be in your harvest. So that was a little bit of not a rant, but a lot of information to take in. Feel free to watch it again. Let me know what you think about this stuff in the comments. I'm just experimenting with different formats, different content, and if you like this or you want to see videos that have a different form to it, let me know in the comments, and I'll see you later.